Okay, everybody, we're doing this via tape today because we don't have Wi-Fi out here, and I am along the Truckee River, not far between Lake Tahoe and Squaw Valley, off of Highway 89, so you may hear some noise, unfortunately, and we're going to try and paint this little scene that I am looking at back here from life. So first thing I'm going to do is just, as I always do, get some shapes in. And there's a tree back there, and there's a big, beautiful green kind of area of weeds right in here, and it comes down to about, geez, it comes all the way over. And back behind this, there's some trees, and then we got the river kind of sneaking out right about here, kind of coming all the way over here. And this area that cuts in, eventually there's a little inlet that comes right in here, and we've got a couple rocks which I'm going to put right, yeah, I think I got it in the right spot, son of a gun. I'll put that rock in there, and then there's another big rock that comes right about here. Okay, so there's our basic shape-oriented composition. Now I am going to see some little pine trees back here, and they're going to go up, and then this whole area here is covered in foliage, and it's kind of going uphill. So we're going to kind of get that uphill movement. Right about here, I see some wonderful light coming in, so I'm going to have to grab that because I'm painting and the light's going to change on me. So I've got my basic shapes in here, and I'm going to start with my gesso brush that I usually use, and I'm going to start with all these kind of dark area back there. Interesting, we got up here yesterday and it was outrageously smoky, and it still is, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was yesterday or even this morning. It's cleared up quite a bit, which is very helpful for us. Other noises you may hear might be people rafting by on rafts, because we're in a very calm area, and a lot of people river raft in here with their families and things like that because it's not very dangerous. So what we're doing here is kind of getting a background in. I've used blue, I've used a little of my asphaltum, and we want to get this whole area kind of back in here, and it's dark, but I've given myself quite a bit of room to go darker. Palette today is white, my titanium white, or radiant white as I like to use. I have Naples yellow, because there's a lot of light in here. On this side, up in here, there's a lot of light, so I'm going to need some nice Naples. And I actually added a little bit of a yellow Hansa in there, so if I need to brighten up some of it, I can brighten it up. I'm just kind of getting these tones in right now. That is not the color, but it is in shadow. So let's get it in there in kind of an abbreviated fashion. We'll kind of, even though they're going to be lighter, we'll just get those up there. So there's my first basic. Big old semi just went by. And we're about, I don't know, about 40 feet, 50 feet off of Highway 89. Now, this is going to be the river. And the river's got some shadows on it, so I kind of want to get those in. They happen to be a little more brown than the, and it's going to sit back in here. Oh, I added too much terp to it, so I'm going to add some more medium. Add too much terp and it runs, you can see. It's starting to run. Keep it kind of thin. So these are kind of where the shadows are going to be on the river, right about here. And then they come right about into this area. And then there's a little bit of ripple back in there, which is going to be kind of fun to paint. And some of the shadows sneak up in here a little closer. So, next thing I want to do is I want to kind of get this kind of overall greenish tone. So I'm going to take sap green into the color I was just using. Going to mix a little ochre, maybe a little raw sienna into it. I didn't finish my palette, sorry about that. So I've got radiant white, Naples yellow, yellow ochre, a little bit of a cat orange hue, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, sap green, asphaltum, or a burnt umber if you wish, and raw sienna. And those are the colors that I have. So right in here tends to have a little bit more of a green. So you can see I'm painting kind of thin. I think you can see that. And all these values here are quite close, even though there are color differences. There's a color nuance. So there's a little bit more green back in areas like this. And I'm kind of under a tree here, so I'm a little darker than I would like, but not bad. Painting outside, one of the things you got to be very careful of is your lighting. You don't want to be in an area that has too much light on it, because what happens is you're going to paint too dark. It's the nature of the beast, everybody. It's just as you paint too dark. If you have too much light, you paint too dark. If you're in too much shadow, you paint too light. Because what happens is all of your colors begin to look darker or look lighter. So there's kind of that tree area, and right about here is where we're going to have some light up on that tree. But right now, geez, I think I'm going to, because I know the light's going to change, I'm going to put that in there now. So when you're painting outside, you've got to kind of plan for what's going to occur. And the light is going to change radically, and the place that I have the light is right here. And so got a little light on a tree right in there. Just kind of smack it in there. The value looks pretty good. All I did is I took some white, some raw sienna, and some sap green, and kind of put them all together. And then this from the tree, there's a tree right there, and then it comes down and it affects a shrub down below it. It's a big shrub. It's not, I'm calling it a shrub. It's probably a small tree. And it's right about there. So we're going to put some light on that shrub as it comes down to the water. And got little pieces of light happening here and there, back here. Not much. So I see a little more golden, so I'm going to add some more raw sienna, maybe even a little orange to it. And I see some right back in here, a little bit of light. So you got light on trees back here. And I'm going to put the lights in first, then we'll put the shape of the tree in. You got to move quick enough because the light is going to change. And that's why I wanted to grab the light back here. But this isn't going to change a lot. So, but all this stuff that's affected by kind of a filtered light just coming in. Just so you know, it's about 4:15 on Thursday. So this is the day before usually I do my demos. And so we're doing it because what we found is we had no internet up here. And because we have no internet, there's not much we can do about it. So we are going to be posting it. Oh, that looks pretty good. We're going to be posting it, and hopefully it's going to work. I mean, we're hoping the sound is okay, because I know we're getting a lot of outside interference. So I'm talking as assuming you guys are hearing me. A lot of little fronds of light happening back in here, and it extends over to about here. So that's about the end of where the bright light is. So I took some Naples and mixed it in there because I wanted that light to be a little brighter right about in here. If I'm too bright, I'm going to put the darker trees over it. And by using this brush, honestly, it's given me edges that are so diffused that it's actually working pretty well. So I'm going to take more Naples, a lot of Naples, a little bit of green, and maybe a little yellow. And we're going to put the light on the ground, which is right about, there's light hitting on the ground. There's trees in front of it, but I'm going to hit the light on the ground first, and then I will overlap those trees. All right? I'm playing back and forth with all these different greens that I'm using. So every now and then I'm picking up a little bit more ochre and changing up that green a little bit. Now, I noticed right at about this point, there's a little bit more greenery down next to the river. So I just added green to the color I was using, and we're just going to add kind of some of that greenery. It extends to about this point. And then as it goes down further, it gets bolder. You can, down in here, it's pretty. It's about that. Whoa, so you see what happens with that light? Look at that. Just by tilting my canvas that much, I've let light come into the picture, and I don't want it because it completely messes me up. So I'm hoping I don't have to shift my canvas, because very often when I'm painting on location, I find I have to shift my canvas because the light changes and it starts hitting the canvas. That's the worst thing that can happen. Literally, it is so difficult to paint with light, strong light on your canvas. So I've been known, I've actually done demos where my back is to what I'm painting. I remember I was painting in Italy one time, and I was painting a boat, and there was no place I could set the canvas. So I'm painting this direction, and the boat's back here. And so it's a very good exercise. It's not for people that are just getting going, let's put it that way. But it's a cool exercise to kind of force yourself to, you have that memory, you have to remember what you just saw over your shoulder. So I'm getting kind of the feel of what I see back in there. I see a little bit of filtered light every so often, right about in there. Another one right about, oh, that's the one I want, right there. And a little bit right in there. So that's hitting on the bank. So we got to concentrate. I know I'm not going to have a lot of changes up in here, and that's why, in case you're wondering, that's why I really have not dealt with that area. This is the area the light's going to really change on. And so if I want to hit it and get what I see now, I really have to do it while the light's there. It'll change so radically that it's almost a different picture. And at that point, you're painting from memory, which is it's another good exercise, everybody. Okay, I was hitting that up in there. There's a little piece of filtered light hitting on this. Got that. I want to make sure this looks like light and that looks like it's not in light. And the lower part of that is a little darker. So I added some blue to the greens I was using, just the ultramarine blue. Okay, that worked. Back in here, there's a couple of nice little occurrences happening, for lack of a better word. There's a little log here and there, and if I can, I will get that in there. I want to go and get this color of the water a little bit more accurate. It's not brown. So I'm going to take the ultramarine and the umber, or the asphaltum in this case, maybe a hint of white, because I don't want it really as black as I can get it. And there's quite a bit. It has kind of a weird olive characteristic to it. So I think I'm coming close to it about in here. Let's see. Yeah, that looks okay. So we're going to go here. Here. So that brown that I first laid down was just kind of an undertone. And I use the word placeholder a lot. And it was kind of that. It was kind of a placeholder for where I think those shadows are going to go. And it was my first approximation. Upon really evaluating it much more closely, I can see that it's a little bit cooler. There's a little more blue into it. And we're getting some really nice reflections down in the water. That's one thing you don't want to miss. And the reflections are coming from here. Oh, that's too strong. Gotta be careful. Gotta make sure it isn't not as dominant as what's reflecting it. So we put a little bit of reflection and a little warmer reflection, maybe here. Hit that. Got a nice area right there. there's a really nice, almost piece of light happening right there. So I'm going to see if I can push that a little bit lighter. All I did is took my ochre and white. Boy, I'm getting some filtered light coming through, and I know I'm going to have to slightly tilt this canvas just a touch because I can see that. So all I got to do is just tweak it like that, or pull it over as I go to paint. So you can see the difference. Look at that. That to that. All right. One of the things I try and explain to people is what you see kind of in the, as long as it's not deep shadow, this is a little bit of a deeper shadow that I'm in, but what you see in the shadow is pretty much what you're going to see when you take your painting indoors. And that's why you don't want too much light on it, because you don't have that kind of light. You put that kind of light on your painting, what happens is you take it indoors and all of a sudden, oh my God, everything looks too dark, because everything is so light that you're compensating by painting darker than it really needs to be. Okay. It's working pretty good. There are little tidbits of light coming through on the water, and I have to be very careful. I'm going to add ochre and white to that green, maybe a little bit of raw sienna. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, I got a raft in my way right now, just a little piece of light happening right here. And let me see if I see any more. Yeah, a little piece. I'm going to make up a piece or two. It's much more golden. My God, it's more of that color. And a little bit right in here. I'm stroking it that way because the light's raking in across, so it's hitting the surface. Now, let's get this tone in. I'm going to use a lot of ochre, mix it right back into the green I was using. Because it's still got a lot of green in it. The water it's warmer, it's still there. It feels right. I'm just going to assume I'm right and go ahead, and then if I have to, I'll fix it. You know? As the old saying goes that I've come up with. Paint like you know what you're doing, assume you're wrong. Boy, I see some nice, interesting shapes are starting to occur. Paint's a little sticky, so I added terp, added more white, more raw sienna, more yellow ochre, and more green. I'm probably a little too light. I could add a little blue to it, I think. Paint's pretty sticky, so I had to add more terp. There's my light again. It's messing me up. Hang on. Okay. I've been known to adjust my easel 5 to 10 times while I'm painting. And as it comes closer to shore, it gets lighter and more yellow. So I'm going to add a little Naples to that color and maybe a little bit of raw sienna, and we'll kind of come into this area right in here. A little more Naples, but add a little blue to that Naples. I feel like I went a little too warm. More Naples. That feels better. Oh, I see the warmth now. It's within that tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend this just by pushing it back up into the color. And I'm going to take this warm area, the ochre, right about in here. And we'll just move that around a little bit. This is going to cast some, I have to have it murky enough because it's going to cast some. Now I have to look back there very carefully because I made some very abrupt decisions. So now I'm going to slow down and be a little bit more accurate without taking too much time. Being a little more careful now. Again, laying off this because I haven't seen it change. This is what I see changing. This I haven't seen change. So I'm staying off that for right now. I'm going to take my... right about... I'm going to take some raw sienna, some warm, because right about here, just a few little lights on trunks back in there. I see it up in here too. I'm going to grab a little bit of a different brush. I don't want the liner. I've got a brush a little bit larger, if I can find it, a little bit larger than a liner. There it is. And I'm going to use that instead. Same kind of color, and I want to hit it right here. Again, I normally wouldn't do this. When you see me paint in the studio, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm doing it now because the light is going to change on me. And I like what I see, and so, you know, plein air painting tends to be a culmination of what occurs while the light is changing. So if you may see something that you initially wasn't there, but all of a sudden you realize, geez, that's kind of nice. Like the light is gone from that bush. It's not there anymore. So I have to kind of remember that and add in little pieces that look like they work. There's a little piece back here off this tree that works. There's a lighter tree, so I took more white into that color, and it's right here. A few little trees back in here. All right, I'm going to muck that brush up a little bit so I can get some of the fronds. I don't like doing them with a brush this small, but it's what I have in my hand right now. The reason I don't like doing it with a brush this small, I feel like I overpick it. Sometimes that's when I will literally go back and work with a, this is much, I got my two extremes. These are both, so I'm going to take the smaller of the two. It's a long bristle filbert or an eggbert, depends on where you buy it. I just feel I get a more spontaneous character. And I try not to paint the same green everywhere as the other thing. So this time I've got more ochre in the green. And we got a big dead area. I've got a little bit of a tree trunk right there. It's probably out of the picture, but I'm going to keep it in the picture. Right about there. And some of the trees coming down. We'll put the darks in later. Little piece of light happening down in here. Up in here. The green is going to extend back, not as bright, but it'll come back in here. A little bit of light right there. I'm going to get the whole thing going in a second, and then we will. Then I'll go back and try and clarify some of the trees that I have. This tree's got to come down lower. I can see right now. So that needs to come down to about, oh, there. Feels better. Also, I'm just getting, I didn't see it earlier, but every now and then I'm getting a little piece of light back in there. So I'm actually using light from two different times now. Think about it. I'm using light from my initial time. Now, I took almost pure yellow with white because this looks very bright back in here.
What are they going to do when we get there? Are they going to say, let's give
Okay. So while I've got this brush, I'm going to start to lay this in, and then we'll go back and spend most of our time working on the water, the bushes, the trees. So let's take this opportunity right now, take my maples, a lot of maples, a little bit of yellow, a little ochre, and just a hint of green. It has a green flavor, but it's not really what you would call a dominant green. So it's probably going to be somewhere, this is going to be the tree. Maybe a little bit more maples. And I want to be careful of that edge so I don't have to worry about it later. So I want to characterize that edge by the way I put my brush down. Now, if I were doing a super finished painting back in the studio, I'd put it down. I'd probably work that area 4 or 5 times to get what I'm after. But when you're working plein air, you're working in somewhat more of an abbreviated fashion. So a little bit of the darker green that I see back in that tree. There's another little bush that sticks out right here, and then one behind it, and that's the lighter, and so it's not that darker green, so it's the lighter that I just was messing around with. And one is here. And there's some ochres and other beautiful little colors back in there. Some really nice, wonderful warms. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes people make in painting greens is they don't look for the warms in the greens. Because I can see a really nice, I can take some pure ochre almost. Let's see how that works. Nope, got to add some white to it. But I see a nice, whoops, added too much white. There we go. A little feel back in here, something going on. And then we've got this one right up in front here, which is even greener. It's more yellow and white, into the same color I was painting with. And we'll just that edge back here is probably going to have a little bit more of that on it too. Now what happens, I don't like that right there, so we're going to kind of get rid of it. But as this green, I can see warm, I can see ochre like right in here too. Raw sienna, ochre, whatever. Raw sienna is just kind of a darker, more red ochre. Bottom of this bush right here, a little darker, a little bit more green. And then we have this big plateau of, it's very green up here and very golden on the top. So I'm going to take the yellow, the white, and the green. Yellow, I have to have enough green in it. Maybe some ochre. That's pretty close. I think we'll start with that. We'll start right there. A little bit more green even. I'm gonna overdo the green. Mix some more ochre in. It's just getting a little acidy on me. And at the bottom of the, where all that is, it gets quite a bit darker and warmer. I'm pushing it because I feel I can get my best effect that way right now, rather than pulling. Normally when you paint, you pull, but sometimes it works if you actually push. It's like using a piece of charcoal. Sometimes it works better if you use it on its side, and sometimes it works better if you use it pretty much as a drawing implement. Okay. Now, I can go back into this water, I think, if I'm close, yeah, and I can give a more interesting edge to all of this. Okay, and then we get reflections down in the water from that green. So we're going to get some reflections right that way, pulling straight down. This is where your value is very important. Value your water has got to be dark enough to show off the reflections. I'm not sure I am. I may need to change that a little bit, but for right now, that's where we're starting. I need some variation. It's very flat right now, very flat and dull. So I need kind of, there's more interesting colors going on in there. It's working. There's a nice, beautiful little log. I'm actually going to put that in there. It's sticking out of the water, and I'm going to paint the shadow side of it first. I didn't draw it in, but it sits right about here. And if it's in the wrong spot, no one cares. Least of all me. So we're going to put that in there. And then there's going to be a shadow of that log right there. There's a little rock in front of it. I don't know if I'm going to put that in. I just want the log. I also want I just noticed something really kind of nice. There's a very nice green in shadow. It's this green, and as it goes back behind this bush, it becomes more of that kind of color. Again, that might not have even been there earlier. Little wind, huh? Ah, the elements, guys. It's part of painting out, part of outdoor painting. Little wind, little changing light. So we're going to paint the top of that area, and I said I'm going to keep it more lighter and warmer, basically, right about in here. That looks pretty good. It's a good starting point, let's put it that way. Green area in between. Nice green spots right in there, kind of there. Breaking down in there. Now we want to go warm again. Naples yellow. And believe it or not, I'm gonna mix a little bit of cat orange into that. Let's see how it looks, because I see oranges back in there. That's actually pretty good. It's a little dry, so it's not laying down on the paint very well. So I added some medium. And I think, hopefully, you guys can see how much easier this paint is going down just by adding a little bit of that medium solvent-free gel. Intermix. I have this whole pot of variety of greens and ochres all in the same kind of spot, so every now and then I'll pick up one. If I just feel like something is too static and I need something, I will pick up an ochre, I'll pick up a stronger color and get it to work. Because really painting things like this is really about a lot of it has to do with layering. You've got to layer one color on top of another until you get the appropriate effect. You cannot do it in a pass. You can't just, I mean, if you're going to paint very abruptly, but if you're going to give some sort of semblance of reality, then you literally have got to go back and make several passes, each time adding a richer layer and making it feel a little bit more naturalistic. So that's kind of a good grounding. But what I do want to do is on that log. Also, one thing the reflections go up and down. I mean, they don't go up. That's the reality, and the reflection goes down. The reality goes up, the reflection goes down. And then there's an area, oh, it's kind of nice. It gets a little darker right back in there. And you add an edge to it, a surface, all right? So we've done that. I want to add a little light to the log. And what I'm going to be doing is I've got someone standing right in front of me. So I've got to tilt. I'm going to wait. I literally cannot see. Someone is blocking that. I think, there he goes. Okay, white, and I need more Naples. I can see it. So, nope, he did it again. That's just from memory. Be a little more careful now. If I have time at the very end, I will go in and make that close to perfect. If I don't have time, it's going to stay very much like an impression. Didn't mean to do that. White Naples. Getting a little windy. Thankfully, it hasn't hit me. When I really get the nice crisp top. Okay, we're just going to leave that alone. There is a reflection. It's very important. When you have water, whatever goes up, there's a rock in front of it, and I don't think I'm going to paint the rock. It's primarily because of time. Whoa, boy, I just spotted something. This is one of the great things about painting on location. If you look back in this area, it's being hit by a little wind, and because of that, it's picking up a little bit of the blue sky. So I can take some white and some blue. It was not there earlier, and I can try it and hit a little bit of that surface. Ooh, I like it. I like it. And we'll get a little bit of that. Kind of works its way up, all the way up in here. I think that's working okay. I haven't stepped back, but and I see it. The reason I spotted that is where I really noticed it was right here, and it interrupts the reflection and works its way out into the water right here. Can't be tentative, you guys. You got to just, if you think it's right, put it down. If it's wrong, then take it out. But don't just kind of skirt it in there and go, oh, I think this is right, because you got to be bold. All right, that's starting. We haven't gone back and played with those trees yet. Like I said, I'm not going to worry about this. I am going to take this brush with some more green and maybe a little more ochre and a lot of terp, I think, instead of medium. And I'm going to add some stronger greens. just felt a little vacant. And I can push it back into that paint. If it goes too strong, then I can take one of these big brushes and just kind of just push it right back into that paint. So all right, let's move, whoa, I'm getting a lot of this beautiful blue characteristic up close now. It's when the wind kicks up, water is very interesting. Water you can see through it, you can see reflections on it, and you can see disturbances. Right now, when you get things like this, it's from disturbances. So we're going to kind of put some more of those in there. The paint's got to be loose enough so that you can put a stroke down and let it work. Again, if I had shot a photo, I wouldn't have seen all this stuff. It wouldn't have happened because it wasn't there. So by painting on location, you discover things. Things occur, and it's how you really learn about nature and painting nature. Okay, let's go back and work on those trees a little bit. Where are we at? I think I've got a little over a half an hour left. I'm not sure, but little wind. If I didn't have my leg on my pallet here, resting against it, it would have come tumbling down on top of me. Getting a little bit of light flickering through. Okay, let's paint some of those trees in. A little too dark. And what's really cool is paint. You don't see it now, but a lot of this came down and overlapped. And so now I'm faking it because I'm using my memory. I just know what it looked like. The light's coming from here, so if there's a tree, it's going to cast a shadow that way. And this is a matter of just taking your time and being patient. Tree shape back in here. And as the trees recede into the distance, I see it really clearly now. They get quite cold, quite blue. So what I can do is right about in here, it's blue and white, and I'm just pushing it back into that paint. And I'm pushing some of these distant trees. It's actually the distant mountain. We really don't even see the trees. And then down below, as a tree goes into shadow, so see a little bit of the tree in shadow. And this, this is the boring stuff to watch. I'm sorry, you guys. It's not the most exciting stuff, but it's the stuff that if you put your time in, you can really make the thing feel natural and believable. If you don't put the time, you can also treat it very much like a very bold and blocky lay-in, in which your intent may not be to make it that refined. My intent is to make them feel like trees. And if that means I've got to do a little bit of extra work on it, it means I'll do the little extra work. I just noticed the way the light is hitting now, I'm getting little pieces of tree. Oh, it's a little too, should have used my liner. There, and then I see some green, beautiful greenery, brighter. Don't like using that brush. Just start to get too picky with it. I feel much more comfortable with the brush like this. Picking out maybe a treetop right here. It doesn't even have to be in the right spot. Right there. A little bit of tree kind of coming down here. A little bit that catches light maybe back in here. And you're just finding things on trees that tend to work. Now I want to kind of come down in here, and I want to get, was a fallen log, and it's probably about here. It's a little bit too much like the water. There's also some back in there. There's variation on that shrubbery, so it's not a flat. Again, I laid it in simple. Now I'll go and break it up. It's kind of like a couple weeks ago I painted some rocks in shadow. And you just keep going back and finding more. There, down here. That was that tree that was lit. Even this tree here needed a little bit more definition in it. So what you do, we're adding a little bit of deeper shadows. That's why, because I didn't want to start too dark. If you recall, when I began this area, I said I was very careful not to go as dark as I could, so that I gave myself room to still go darker. Still not getting that kind of look. I want this bush, there we go, working its way. I have to keep adding light to it because I keep thinking I'm light enough and I'm not. There, and then coming up there. You can't make it look too simple because there's more going on. Now, the other thing is the very edge of the water is probably the darkest in that background. So by taking that brown or umber and the dark blue, and I'm almost drawing now. I'm just drawing it, and if I have to, I'll take that edge and pull it. You don't want to make a line. You want it to stop and start. It's kind of how we see it. So it goes up there. A little bit more dark. So I hope what you guys are seeing is how a piece builds. It starts simple and it builds complex, and you build as much complexity on a plein air piece. You build as much complexity into that piece as you have time to build, until either the light changes so much or you feel you're done. It's usually the light changing, because you'll never, I shouldn't say, if you're like me, you'll never feel like it's completely as good as it should be. You feel like you always should be doing more. But it's like now we've given an edge to the other side of that river. So that part feels relatively correct. I always have to use the relative kind of adjective, because that's kind of the way it is. You're relatively correct. I don't know if you're really correct, but you're relatively correct. So I'm going to take a real light color now, almost white with just a touch of yellow, touch of Naples, and we're going to put a couple of these overlapping. There. Gotta make sure it's wet enough so it sits on top of the paint and doesn't smear into the paint. Just leave them alone. Put a few in, stop, and then if I have to, I'll put a few in later or take a few out. I see a change that occurs right about there. I see a few of the now, right next, that water, it's a little darker. It's not quite that dark, but a little darker right there. So I actually went darker than I needed to. I'll just take my brush and gonna get another paint rag here. My big brush, mix kind of some of that darker color into it, and we'll kind of pull it up. Oh, I like the way it's smearing together a little bit up in there. It's kind of nice. And then I think at this point I can almost see through the water a little bit. It gets a lot lighter too. So what's going to happen? We have that disturbance. I'm going to keep the disturbance, but as the water moves closer to us, and it warms up quite a bit right about in here too, I see. I just threw more raw sienna into it at that point. And we're beginning to see through it. So they're kind of warm, but they're not real warm. So I'd rather have them be really subtle. Nope, that's too subtle. I like to just put them in there, and then if they don't work, take a clean brush and wipe them out. Now, one of the things that I'm getting that I didn't get earlier, once again, is we're getting a more interesting shadow happening right here. So I'm adding it in there. I like that little touch. Partly because it's going to go behind this rock. I'm going to make that darker. Okay, now I'm going to paint that rock in shadow. It was probably different before. I really like it now. I didn't. It's dark and it's warm. And wait a minute, that's this rock. So this rock is here. That's the rock. So we're going to paint the shadow right there. I painted it out when I painted all that activity in. A lot of and then the rock in front has a lot more blue and it's darker, and that's this rock. It's probably a little too dark. Okay, there's a couple other little tiny rocks. Ooh, some really cool stuff. Just noticed it. Wasn't there earlier. Beautiful raking, because all these shadows that rake, it also rakes on the ground. So I'm getting this wonderful shadow on the ground right here. Right there. works its way up. Darker than the water. Similar to the rock, but the rock's darker, so I gotta remix that a little bit. Okay. Now, I don't have my good palette knife here. Oh yeah, I do. I have a couple of knives. I'm going to use them. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to scrape a little bit, get a little bit of this paint off. I'm just going to have to work it too hard. So now I'm going to take Naples and white. On a clean spot on my palette, more white. And we're going to put light on that rock. Damn, I got light coming through again. I got to move this canvas just one more time. So it's about the third time I've had to do this. There we go. So we're going to put light on the rock. There. There. I'll take clean brush, take that background and recarve that a little bit more paint. I'm going to throw more medium into it because I don't like it. It's not laying down really well. That's better. A little bit of light on this rock, but not much. Skylight, it's a little lighter. So what I'm doing is I'm judging value against value right now. This value is darker than this value. Why? Partly because of the way it's lit, partly possibly because of the minerals in the rock itself. Because very often a rock can be cooler or warmer without being affected by light, just because of the makeup of that rock. So, but I do see a lot of cool color. There, down in here. So I'm just going to leave that alone for right now. And I'm going to put a little bit, there's some greenery in shadow back by the rock. And I see a little bit of it over on the ground here. Little piece of light every now and then hitting it, but not much. And then you get that great light on the ground. Running out of some of my colors here. I'm going to add a little bit of paint, so I'm going to add a little bit more medium and white. Those are the two colors that I feel I'm going to need more of. So there's the medium, and I may need some more Naples too, but right now I think those two colors may do me. So let's take the white and the medium and hit that ground. There's a little bit of warmth into it also, so I threw a little bit of orange. And a lot of light when it gets back there. Gonna add some that shadow, could bring it all the way up here. If I need to put some light in there, I will. And it kind of works its way up the hill a little bit, but it lightens up as it goes up too. That feels like dappled light on there, as much as I can get it. It's not exactly what I see in front of me. I've done a little bit of improvising. And it's interesting how as the light changes, it affects this rock a little differently. So we had a little bit of light on the foreground rock, so we're looking past things now, back up into here. I am now, I see a really beautiful color change, but I've already done disturbance. So I'm going to change some of that. I'm going to do something I tell people not to do. Well, I want to see something. I tell people not to do this, to chase the light as things change. But I am going to do a couple things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on a couple areas I don't like. And get that real nice stream of light that comes across right there. It adds a little bit of punch to this tree that sits out in front. It's probably a little light, not necessarily the right color. A little bit more light in here. I'm trying to get the character of that, so kind of a dry brush on top helps. So this is the first time I've actually stood back. So I'm standing back. It's feeling okay. I'm not crazy about that area, and I'm still not real happy right here. And I've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to take this last 10 minutes and do a little correction. I think first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the light here, but I'm going to amplify this area here. I'm going to make it lighter. So I just take pure white and just a touch of the blue. If I have to, I've got a couple other blues here I can throw out here. In fact, let me try this. Let me try a King's blue. I have a little bit of a something called King's Blue. It's a Williamsburg color. It's a wonderful color, and it may be just the punch that I need. So get rid of some of the. Let's take some more clean white. Set it over here. Grab some of that King's Blue. Yeah, it's totally a different kind of a blue. So I'm going to add some medium to it. A little bit more King's Blue. And I'm going to stand back a little bit. That feels better because now this sits back, this sits up front. We'll just leave that alone. I don't want to go too far with it. I do want to disturb the reflections because when that happens, it does disturb the reflections. I do want to make sure I get the character of whatever reflections I have on this far side, like and I want to make sure I get that too strong. But I do want to get it down there. Now I'm going to revisit a couple areas that I don't like. I'm going to do a tree. It's all in shadow. Just make the trunk stand out just a little bit more. And another one up here, kind of some just scrubby stuff that comes in here. Things are starting to look okay. I think I could punch that a little bit right here. Nope, not enough. Do it again. Not enough. One more try. There we go. So you just keep breaking it up. Like the light changed so much. I know there was more light here. The light changed so much there. It kind of messed me up. And it's because I didn't get all of it in when I wanted to. So I know it was a little brighter. It had a little bit more life to it, so to speak. There and on this. I wiped them out once, got to get them in there. So see what happens? You put tree trunks in front and it sits behind. Now you could do tree trunks in shadow too, because they are, you see them right now, but I don't want them to stand out like the one in the light. So I basically kind of kept them, you see one or twos back in here. See, I don't like that. I did 1, 2, 3. You see what I just did there? Very bad. That's the kind of stuff when I'm in my studio working, I'll make a comment like, you know better than that. But when you're working rapidly, you're making decisions in a kind of a spontaneous way, and not all of them are going to be good, you know. The more experience you have, you'll make more good ones than bad ones, but you're still going to make bad ones. Boy, there's some beautiful light starting to come across. Look at that shadow. In fact, I'm going to take this shadow, let it come up here, and come right across. We're just going to add that in just a little bit. And what I'm going to do, this shadow here comes up here. So we're getting that shadow raking across it now. It's not working bad. It's not great, but it's not working bad. It's good enough. Let's put it that way for what I want to achieve. A little bit of a plane over here. I think I might do one little rock out in the water there. I don't want to put it right below this. I think I'll move it back. And we'll just do a little shadow indication. And most of it's in light. So we'll take the white and the Naples and the medium. And with a little bit of reflection. Now, see if I can do a little bit more on that log. Even though there's no light on it now. And it kind of messed up the background a little bit, so you always just take that color kind of like it, clean it up. So we've got the log, we got the rock. I like the fact that I put that rock in there. I think it needed it. And there's another rock happening right there, and there's one back there. Sometimes I'll just kind of pop stuff in there at the last minute that I'll look at the piece and feel like it's a little vacant and needs something. So I might put that in. Another one up in there. Get the reflection in. Get these reflections going over here. They're okay. They're not as, if I really study them carefully, I can see a lot more. We're almost done here. I'm sure when I finally get this back inside, there'll be a few things that I want to adjust. And that is pretty much normal, by the way. Some plein air artists literally go in and paint and paint and paint. I tend not to. I kind of, either it works or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, then I got a nice canvas to work on again. But if it does, I like to keep the integrity of what I did when I was on location and not try and, if I can improve it slightly with a few little adjustments, I will do it. but generally speaking, I prefer my plein air to feel like a piece that I did when I was on location. And there's memories wrapped up in these things, you know? I mean, you remember the day you were out there that you did that particular painting. I mean, there's something about that. And particularly if you're traveling, you know, if you've captured something, you could always do paintings back in the studio from photographs, yes, but there's something about, I know last year I did a painting in Sicily. There were 2 paintings that I did that I liked quite a bit, out of about 15, but the 2 that I liked, one was an interior of a villa, and it just worked, and the other one was something I painted almost completely with a palette knife. Was a rock, just a big rock in the ocean, giant with foliage on it, and I don't know why, I had painted 2 already in the day, and I just felt like I wanted to try something different, use my knife, and sometimes those things, everything gels, and it's 2 of the paintings that I've done, at least last year, that I was happy with on location. It doesn't mean you weren't happy with other paintings, it just means that overall that painting resonated more with what I was attempting to do. Other than that, you guys, I'm pretty close to finish. At least the light has changed so much that it's really, I mean, I'm really not doing the same painting if I keep going on this thing. So I kind of have to quit, partly because of that. Most of it works. I see little things I don't like, and I'll probably fuss on them a little bit, but again, I probably won't put more than 10-15 minutes at the most back into this if I do anything. And I'm up here. Normally, you know, we'll be back in the studio doing something live next week, so, you know, sorry that I couldn't do this live. I would have much preferred to, although this is live. It's just that you guys can't ask questions and things of that nature, which I kind of enjoy. So hopefully this was relatively informative. You know, I don't know how it looks because of the light that I'm in and the way I was challenged to a degree with light on my canvas happening. But the hell, that's part about painting outside, and that's part of the charm and the beauty. And sometimes you make mistakes, and the mistakes, or sometimes you see something like I added things in that weren't there when I first started. All right, partly because all of a sudden something happens, and you say, "Hey, I can throw that in there and make it work." And so why not do it? I think that's about where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to take my glasses off. You see me in my painting outfit, my plein air convention t-shirt, and the painting, and that's the scene back there. You guys can, I don't know if Anna can get a shot of the scene, but happy painting, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.